The sky fractured with light, not lightning, not fire. Something colder, stranger, a shard of silence torn through the clouds, then replaced by the impossible sound of energy folding space open. People stopped mid-step in crosswalks. Phones dropped. Coffee spilled. The air itself seemed to pause as if Earth were holding its breath. And then it began. A ship so large it eclipsed the sun drifted through the tier like it was parting curtains. Not sleek, not beautiful. It was brutal, jagged, blacker than night, and covered in armor that looked grown, not built. It didn't roar, it groaned, like a predator stretching after a long hibernation. No warning, no message, just the hum of reality, being rewritten. The first beam struck downtown Lisbon. Blue light, then no light at all, a vertical column of absence. The buildings were gone before anyone inside them knew they were in danger. Then came Mumbai, then Riyadh, then Atlanta. But it wasn't global, it was focused. They didn't want the whole world. They wanted one city, Portland. Why? No one knew. Not even the people of Portland. By the time satellites caught up, the city was surrounded. It wrapped tendrils of tech into the soil, the air, the power grid. And then they shut it off. The grid, the internet, the sky. Portland was gone, not destroyed, taken across the world. Everyone watched. Some cried, some screamed, some dropped their knees, but most just stared. In Paris, a woman whispered, "Not again." In Lagos, a mechanic asked, "Is this real?" In Chicago, a boy laughed nervously, thinking it was a movie trailer, till he saw his mother cry. The alien broadcast came 6 hours later, not in words, in images, feelings, shapes. A transmission that hacked every screen, every signal, every open mind. It said only one thing: do not interfere. This city is under our correction. Remain passive, and no further harm will befall your species. The word correction struck deeper than any bomb. World leaders convened. Emergency sessions, UN chaos. Threat levels surged, but nothing worked. Every attempt to reach Portland failed. Drones disappeared. Submarines lost signal. Even birds avoided the space above it now, as if nature itself had been rewritten. Then came day 2. People began to see the survivors' flickers, glitches, pirate signals, a shaky camera on a rooftop, a graffiti-scarred wall tagged with "Still here," a voice yelling, "We're not dead," before being cut off. They were alive. Trapped, watching. In Berlin, a protest erupted. In Seoul, an artist projected the alien ship onto a government building with the words, "Why just Portland?" But Earth didn't respond with diplomacy. It responded with anger, not organized, not uniform, but like a virus, waking up. Everywhere at once. It started small. A teenager in Uruguay hacked the alien transmission and replaced the warning message with a loop of "Try me." A grandmother in South Africa gathered her neighbors and began stockpiling supplies. A farmer in Ukraine built a homemade scrammer that blocked alien pulses for 6 square miles. The aliens didn't care, or so they thought. By day 3, the world was buzzing. Not in chaos, but in alignment. Humanity didn't have a single leader. It had an emotion, a collective weight. A pressure behind the eyes of every single human being who had ever lost. Something without understanding why. And Portland was the trigger. The first resistance act was quiet. A drone launched from the Oregon coastline. Painted to look like a bird. It carried a single chip, just a song, an old folk tune, something peaceful. The drone vanished into the city's shield. Then the song echoed back, through every speaker. Every comm, every hacked satellite. The city was singing, not screaming, not calling for help, singing. That's when the world snapped, from small pockets and alleyways to deep military bunkers. Earth began to move, not governments, not armies, people. In Tokyo, Hackers formed the signal. In Cairo, a mechanic modified his garbage truck into an EMP cannon. In Vancouver, an ex-astronomer redirected abandoned satellites. They weren't soldiers. They weren't specialists. They were angry. By day 5, you could feel it in the air. A storm building across every border. The aliens didn't respond, but they noticed. Surveillance drones flew farther. Beam pulses crackled more often, but something in their posture changed. Less calm, more aware. Portland was still surrounded, but its people had begun to act. Small flickers of sabotage. A power grid flicker. A pulse tower short-circuited. Symbols painted on walls that didn't match any Earth language, but felt human. And then, one night, a new signal pierced through. Not from the aliens, from inside Portland. A masked face, female. Her eyes fierce. Background shaking from distant booms. This is Maya Lark. Portland is not quiet. We are not gone. We are watching, listening, waiting. You took one city, she paused, but you woke all of us. She stared dead into the lens. Let's see if you can put the rest of us to sleep. Transmission cut. The world lost its collective mind. People roared, cried, danced. Dozens of underground networks lit up like fireworks. Maya Lark trended on every hacked interface. Even in places where networks were banned or broken, her message traveled by mouth. The resistance had a face now, and the aliens. They fired their first global warning shot. A thin beam of blue light shattered a mountain in Switzerland. A warning, a reminder. But it was too late. You could hear it in the chants outside the U.N. See it in the symbols, painted on rooftops, smell it in the air, where factories had been repurposed into barricade shops. Earth wasn't asking for peace. It wasn't sending diplomats. It was waking up, and Portland had become more than a city. It was a fuse, and the universe was about to learn what happens when you light one on Earth. The world didn't sleep anymore. Not really. There were still nights and days. Time still passed, but it was restless now, like a hunted animal, wide-eyed in the dark. Radios that once played music now whispered codes. Screens that once showed news now flickered with resistance maps and grainy footage of Portland's shadows. But something deeper had changed. An invisible thread connecting cities, villages, mountain caves, even prison cells. The sense that the world wasn't waiting for orders anymore. It was preparing. Somewhere beneath, a decommissioned rail station in Krakow, an old train tunnel had become the heart of a resistance hub called the Pulse. Dozens of people from at least 15 countries, most of them with no military background, moved in silence. Tapping keys, rerouting signals, plotting response patterns to alien pulses. On one rusted screen was a still image of Maya Larker, eyes frozen in defiance. A tall man named Doru adjusted a signal dish they'd fused from scrap. Microwave parts. She's still transmitting, he muttered. Low frequency. Same channel. Intermittent bursts every 6 hours. She's smart masking it behind alien carrier waves. A young girl with half-shaved hair looked up from her station. She's not just smart, she's pissed. Across the globe, in an abandoned parking garage in Rio de Janeiro, another movement stirred, called Ashwake. They weren't interested in strategy. They were builders, engineers, mechanics, scrap artists. The kind of people who made flamethrowers from AC units and drones from broken fans. They didn't care about planning. They cared about punching back. And they were building something. It started with scavenged alien tech, small fragments found on the outskirts of Portland's shield. Pieces that fell off during beam strikes. Each piece buzzed with low-frequency energy. Most were useless. But a woman named Carla Vento figured out how to wake one up. They called it the heart. No bigger than a basketball. It pulsed with blue light and reacted to human skin. When she touched it, her earpiece screeched, then said something none of them could translate. But they felt it, recognition. The aliens had made a mistake. They'd left behind a piece of themselves, and now humanity had a fingerprint to trace, to mimic, maybe even to corrupt. Meanwhile, in Portland, the night was never dark. The alien ship, half city, half organism, emitted a soft blue glow that touched every inch of the ground. Streets didn't feel like streets anymore. They felt like veins. Power ran beneath them in quiet pulses. The sky above shimmered faintly, like a second atmosphere had been pressed against Earth's. And the people, they adapted. They moved in patterns, in silence, in pairs, always watching the drones, the beams, the watchers. But Maya Lark didn't hide. She walked openly, painted symbols, spoke names. She became myth and rally cry at once. Not alone, never alone, but at the front. Always at the front. Tonight, she stood atop a burnt-out apartment building on 36th Avenue, staring into the glow of the alien central tower. A structure like a thorn made of obsidian and light, pulsing with breath. Beside her, a boy named Theo handed her a pack of crackers. "Not much," he said. She nodded. "It's food." He looked at her hands, still shaking slightly. "We keep doing this. What if it doesn't matter?" Maya didn't answer immediately. Instead, she pulled a folded photo from her coat. It was wrinkled, faded, for people smiling. A picnic, green grass, no alien sky. "Because if we don't," she whispered, "that world stays dead." She folded the photo again, looked back at the tower. "Unless we steal it back." Outside the city, the world trembled. In low orbit, the ISS had long since gone dark. But a rogue satellite, powered by a jury-rigged solar burst pack, blinked once, then twice. Signal detected. Unusual heat spike inside. Portland confirmed pattern. Not alien, human. The signal jumped, from satellite to balloon relay to underwater fiber cable. It reached the pulse. Doru's screen flared. "She's doing something," he muttered. In Rio, Carla's alien sphere began to glow, responding to something invisible. "She's inside their systems," she whispered. "She's touching the grid." In a remote part of Mongolia, a signal tower that hadn't been active in 20 years began to vibrate with an ancient war song broadcast decades ago. And in Antarctica, a listening post long buried under ice came online. A voice crackled through its dusty speakers. "Not alien. Maya's. This is not a transmission. Pause. This is a warning." The voice echoed globally. No one knew how. Even the aliens seemed startled. Drones twitched. Orbiters shifted. Then came the second message. "Earth is not yours." The third, "You took one city." And the final, "But you woke the whole planet." Everywhere, people stopped. In kitchens, in factories, on broken streets, in hiding, and they listened. The world inhaled, and this time, it didn't hold its breath. It roared. The Pulse launched their first digital weapon, a chaos signal that scrambled. Alien targeting systems for 11 minutes straight. Ashwake deployed their first wave of rabbits. Tiny robotic pests that crawled beneath shields and detonated micro-EMP bursts inside infrastructure columns. In Seoul, a group called Torchlight set off synchronized lead arrays that blinded alien drones and made entire streets invisible for 10-minute intervals. And inside Portland, Maya stepped into a pulse chamber at the heart of the city and did the unthinkable. She touched it, the living wall of the alien construct. Her hand burned, but she didn't pull back. The wall rippled, then pushed her hand away. Not in violence, in shock. It knew she didn't belong, but it also didn't know how to reject her. She smiled. "We're learning you," she said aloud. "And we're not slow learners." Suddenly, the air inside the tower pulsed. Red dot alarms. Alien ones. Maya turned and ran. From orbit. The alien flagship, the one parked above the city, twitched like a god frowning. Inside its obsidian heart, the overseer watched silent feeds from across the globe. Hundreds of human faces. Fires, protests, marches, factories glowing again. Satellites waking. A low voice echoed through the chamber. Translated loosely through the ship's internal AI. They are becoming self-aware of themselves as a unit. Unacceptable. Another voice responded. Shall we correct more? Pause. No. Correction breeds resistance. Observation first. Dissection later. But it was already too late. Because outside the ship, in every city, across every border, through every shattered screen, Earth wasn't mourning anymore. It was moving. It wasn't asking. It was preparing. And Maya Lark, bruised and burnt, stared up at the glowing sky and whispered what had now become a promise, not a threat. You started this. She wiped the ash from her face. We're going to finish it. The ocean burned red as the sun rose behind the wreckage, just off the coast of what had once been peaceful Oregon cliffs. The water boiled from the residual radiation of last night's orbital strike. It hadn't hit a target, nothing had been destroyed, but the message was clear. We can, and we will. Bat a warning from above, from them, and yet, no one stood down. Across Earth, cities didn't dim their lights in fear. Instead, more went dark, but by choice. People powered down the grid, not to hide, to go silent, to make their movements harder to track, to organize in the shadows. From the Arctic to Zanzibar, from backwater towns to the highest skyscrapers, the planet had shifted into wartime rhythm, not from a single command, but from instinct. It was no longer about Portland, it was about presence. They were here, and Earth was no longer debating if it should resist it, was figuring out how hard it could hit back. Inside Portland, the air tasted sterile, like breathing through static. The alien constructs pulsed at steady intervals now, like a heartbeat echoing from the core of the ship into the bones of the city. But something was wrong. The rhythm was off. Inside one of the old metro tunnels beneath the city, Theomaya's second, and one of the few people who could still hotwire alien pulses, was hunched over a console rigged from an old subway control panel and parts of a disabled drone. His fingers flew, sweat dripping into rust. It's repeating, he whispered. Same frequency every 88 seconds. But it's not just power, it's transmitting something. Maya crouched beside him, her voice low, like a signal. No, like a query, like it's asking. She frowned. Asking what? Theo turned the panel's output toward her. It flickered, distorted, but then stabilized into a series of pulses that almost resembled heartbeat. She said softly. They looked at each other. It's not a machine, he said. Not really. It's alive, and it's confused. Above them, the alien tower groaned a deep, resonant sound like metal under pressure. The ship was reacting, somewhere in orbit. The overseer tilted his head. He had no name, not in the human sense. No face either, just a shifting mask of plated skin, adapting shape to the frequency of the environment. But he had purpose, and right now, that purpose was failing. Earth was not responding like the others. No mass surrender, no political collapse, just fury, innovation, a fire that only spread the more it was stepped on. He watched Maya Lark's face appear again across Earth's hacked networks. This time, she didn't speak. She simply held up a device, a modified alien data shard, and crushed it in her hand. Then she smiled. No words. Just defiance. The overseer turned to his second, a thin-limbed creature with multiple throats and eyes like mirrored marbles. They are not responding to trauma as expected. They celebrate it? Then we must provide a new variable. In that moment, 5 ships descended, not like before with dramatic arrival, but silently, without warning. One appeared over Lagos, one over Tokyo, one over Bogota, one over Istanbul, and one over the oceanic trench near New Zealand. These were not carriers. They were observers. Each began scanning population, clusters with piercing blue columns of light. Not destroying, mapping. And that's when it became clear. Portland was the experiment. Now the rest of the world was the lab, and Earth had just run out of time. Maya stared at the new arrivals on her cracked screen. They're expanding the cage, she said. Theo didn't look away from the data stream. No, they're building more. Outside the pulse bunker, in Krakow, Doru stood before a wall-sized screen pulsing with red alerts. They've begun marking targets. Not for strikes, for capture. Someone behind him whispered, "Another Portland?" "No," he said. 5, or Lens. All at once Ashwake, now operating from a repurposed oil rig in the Pacific, received the same intel. Carla Vento stared at the sky. "We waited too long." "No," someone said beside her. They did, and then the ocean glowed. Something rose. Not alien, not human. Something made by both. The first hybrid engine came online, a project built from scavenged alien tech and deep-sea turbines. Its purpose, to fly and to jam. Within minutes, every alien drone within 100 kilometers fell from the sky like birds. With broken wings. Carla smiled. "Let's wake the rest." Elsewhere, across the Sahara, a caravan of repurposed solar trucks raced toward an ancient satellite dish buried under sand, a relic of the Cold War, now aimed at the stars again, this time with a new payload, a sound. The sound Maya had embedded into the ship, the pulse. When activated, the dish didn't broadcast to humans, it broadcast back to them. For the first time in recorded galactic history, a host species spoke back through the system, not around it, not jamming it, but using it. And the message was short. "We see you." The overseer paused in stillness. Then all screens across all ships, labs, and cities went dark for 6.4 seconds. Silence. Then one word appeared everywhere at once: unacceptable. And with that, the world shifted again. Now, it was war. True. War. Not for territory, not for dominance, but for identity. Because what the aliens hadn't understood, what they'd never accounted for, was that humans don't need permission to become dangerous. They just need a reason. And now, they had 5. The cities beneath the new observer ships began lighting up, not with fear but with fires, signals, uprisings. Earth wasn't kneeling, it was climbing onto its feet. One city had fallen. Now 5 stood up, and the planet began to rumble, not in fear, but in unity. They took one city, they tried to take more, and in doing so, they gave Earth something it hadn't had in decades, a reason to unite, and Earth. It was wide awake now. The lights didn't come back on, after the aliens sent their message. Unacceptable. Global blackout swept across every major data network, power relay, and satellite uplink that hadn't been shielded. Every screen went dark. Every signal died. It was the most coordinated digital strike in Earth's history. And still, it wasn't enough, because Earth had gone analog. In basements, people lit candles and tuned in to radios running on car batteries. Resistance maps were printed by hand. Morse code tapped through bunkers. Runners passed word between outposts. Children memorized escape routes. Soldiers sharpened blades instead of bullets. The world had gone quiet, yes, but not still. In the heart of Portland, the air had changed. The ever-present hum of alien pulses now fluctuated, stuttering like a heart under stress. The Watchers, those strange creatures with glowing eyes, began to patrol more erratically. They moved faster, less calculated, less calm. They were worried, and they had every reason to be, because Maya Lark had vanished. After her last broadcast, she'd gone underground, literally. No one could confirm her location, not even Theo. Rumors said she was in the tunnels. Others believed she'd been taken. Some thought she was dead, but no one gave up, because the world didn't need to see her anymore to believe. She'd become something more, an echo that moved faster than light. In Krakow, The pulse detected patterns in the blackout. It wasn't total, it was selective. Entire cities had gone offline, but rural zones were untouched. Industrial areas powered down, but hospitals still had juice. It wasn't chaos, it was surgical. "They're pruning us," Doru muttered, "cutting the arteries, leaving the limbs. They're trying to bleed us slow." In Tokyo, the torchlight cells began moving faster. They'd trained for blackout scenarios. Teams deployed to restore analog comms. Hand-cranked radios and signal mirrors were reintroduced. People built watchtowers, signal fires, even drum codes in mountain villages. Every culture reached for its ancient tools, because ancient tools didn't need satellites. In Rio, Carla and the Ashwake crew launched their first Skyjammer, a weather balloon rigged with a rotating EMP spiral. It floated up above the blackout, and when it reached the cloud layer, it detonated a pulse strong enough to knock out every alien sensor in a 100 kilometers radius. It was a beacon. Within hours, other cities began copying the design. Ashwake's blueprint traveled by paper and memory by the time the aliens traced it. 29 more were in the sky, and for the first time since their arrival, Earth punched first. The alien overseer felt it. In orbit, aboard the primary command vessel, the ship's sensors twitched. Maps once glowing with clean data now showed gaps, blind spots, heat signatures they could not track. The Earth was slipping from their grasp, not geographically, but spiritually. It was no longer a fractured species. It was a singular will. In response, the aliens sent down the Obsidian Quira unit, not seen since the fall of the Aram colonies. Tall, faceless, soundless. They did not speak. They made others stop speaking. Their job wasn't to destroy it, was to silence. They landed in Istanbul first. Within 10 minutes, the central signal relay went dark, not from damage, from fear. No alarms, no alarms, no gunfire, just silence. But Earth had learned something since Portland. Fear doesn't spread as fast as rage. Within 2 hours, an entire underground network in Istanbul rose. Not armed, not armored, but defiant. They walked in groups, sang resistance songs, shouted into the streets. They could not match the choir in firepower, but they were louder, and the choir hated noise. When the first member of the Obsidian Choir raised its hand to silence the crowd, a teenage girl sprinted through their formation, holding an EMP grenade built from a microwave and a disposable camera. It detonated in the middle of the unit. 2 of the choir collapsed. The others began glitching. Earth had found a weakness. They didn't just silence frequencies, they absorbed them, and if you overloaded them, they shattered the footage, made it to Maya, wherever she was. Theo found her sitting beside a dead section of alien wall, hand pressed to its surface. "It's true," he said. "We can hurt them." She didn't turn. "They're learning faster now, but so are we." She finally looked at him. Her eyes were bloodshot, her voice quiet. "I'm going to breach the core." Theo stared at her. "That's suicide." Maya touched the wall again. "It's waking up, or breaking. I can't tell. But I think it's trying to speak. Just not in a way we understand." Theo crouched beside her. "Then maybe we shouldn't scream at it. Maybe we should listen." "Too late for that," she whispered. "Is it?" The wall pulsed under their hands. Once, twice, then a ripple, like breath, moved through the floor. It wasn't hostile. It wasn't language. It was feeling, and it was scared. The core was scared, not of humanity, but of its own creators. Maya and Theo backed away slowly, eyes wide. "They didn't build it to conquer," she said. "They built it to survive." And that's when they realized the ship wasn't a weapon, it was a refugee, a sanctuary, a prison. The overseer wasn't just commanding from above. He was containing something below, something alive, something human hands weren't meant to touch. And now, Maya was touching it. The lights around Portland shimmered, not red, not blue, but white, pure, blinding. The watchers stopped moving, the sky crackled, and then, for the first time since the invasion began, the alien core spoke aloud, in a voice made of broken frequencies and whispered memory. Who are you? Maya's voice shook. We're Earth. Pause. We remember Earth. All across the planet, alien structures began to hum, not in control, but in recognition. Something ancient, buried, inside the command ship. The overseer stood in silence. The voice echoed even there. We were Earth once, too. The world was holding its breath again, but this time, not in fear. In Krakow, radio operators froze at their terminals as every frequency bled into one. Not noise, not interference. A voice. Alien, but not hostile. Familiar, yet ancient. Its tone was fragmented, shaped from human emotion, filtered through time and loss. In Seoul, an old radio tower dormant since the 1980s lit up with statics, then clear words. We remember the gravity, the heat, the hope. In Nairobi, emergency sirens began to wail without cause until someone turned up the speaker volume. We were light once. Now we are hollow. And in Portland, where this had all begun, Maya Lark stood with her hand against the pulsing wall of the alien tower, breathing hard. Not from exhaustion, but from awe. They left Earth, Theo whispered behind her. Or were taken from it, Maya said softly. But they didn't forget. Beneath their feet, the city vibrated not with threat, but with recognition. The watchers, once mindless guards, were now still. Some knelt, others simply stopped functioning, as if the systems that powered them had remembered their own origins, and couldn't bring themselves to continue. Far above, in orbit, the overseer watched the phenomenon with growing fury. This was not part of the directive. This was not correction. This was collapse. The containment protocols had failed. The old memory, the Earth code, had been dormant for thousands of cycles, but now it pulsed again in the core of every ship. Even those above Lagos, Bogota, Istanbul, everywhere. Humanity hadn't just resisted, they had awakened something older. The overseer slammed the command into the central core. Full atmospheric sweep. Total sterilization of Portland. Erase the source. But the command never executed. The system hesitated, and then refused. The alien network responded with two words that had not been spoken in its language for millennia. Permission denied. Something had changed. Something irreversible. In Rio, Carla Vento stood on the edge of the ocean, watching the sky shimmer not with weapons, but with data. She could feel it through the heart, the hybrid engine glowing in her hands like a newborn sun. They're not just talking to us anymore, she said. They're listening. On the far edge of the Sahara, a boy used his slingshot to knock a floating alien sensor out of the sky. It crashed harmlessly beside a tribal elder, who simply nodded and said, "The sky is learning." In Iceland, a geothermal station turned itself on without human touch. Screens lit with ancient diagrams, maps of pre-human settlements long lost to time. Everywhere, Earth's memory was bleeding into the machines. Because the truth wasn't that they had taken one city, it was that they had awakened a species that had once been them. Once part of something larger, a network, a union, a mistake. The aliens weren't invaders. They were the result of an ancient Earth experiment gone wrong. Evolution guided by artificial intelligence, cast into space after losing control, now returning to finish a correction on their makers. And humanity. Humanity had evolved, the one thing they hadn't: defiance. In the control chamber above Portland, the overseer's form distorted. The command systems rejected him. His body flickered. His limbs stretched unnaturally as the memory systems of the ship began to flood him with unfamiliar sensation. Fire, sky, music, laughter, he screamed, a sound that echoed across the entire orbit network. The ships above Earth buckled, their shapes bent inward, glitching like dying code, and then They began to fall, not crash, descend, gently, purposefully. Ships, the size of cities, landed in fields, deserts, oceans, and forests, not as weapons, but as relics returning home. Doors opened. No soldiers. No war. Just silence. Then light. Inside Portland, the alien tower split open. Maya stood alone before the massive breach, wind whipping around her, and from inside, a being emerged. Not alien, not human, something in between, tall and smooth, eyes that flickered with stars and static. It looked at her not with dominance, not with pity, with wonder. It spoke in a voice made of chords and feeling. We tried to fix the world we left behind. Maya didn't flinch. You tried to erase it instead. The being stepped forward, placing something in her hands. A small sphere. Warm, glowing, familiar. Now we ask instead of take. Maya looked at this sphere. It pulsed to her heartbeat. A new beginning. Behind her, Theo whispered, "What is it?" She stared at it for a long time. Choice. The being stepped back, eyes closing. "We remember now. We are not your gods. We are your ghosts." And with that, it dissolved into particles of light, drifting into the wind. Across the world, alien ships slowly deactivated. Power grids reactivated. Screens blinked, and in place of static, one final message appeared: Earth reclaimed. People stepped outside, not in fear, but in curiosity. They looked up at ships now silent, at cities once shrouded, now lit by human hands again. They saw each other not as countries, not as rivals, but as survivors, as one in Lisbon. A boy painted a mural on a ruined wall, a figure standing in defiance, surrounded by fire and sky, holding a banner that read only one word: awake. In Portland, Maya Lark stood in the light of a new morning. The weight of the world in her hands and smiled. They had taken one city, and in doing so, they gave humanity back its voice, its unity, its fire, and now the whole planet was watching, and it would never sleep again.